Since we're talking about state, and we've talked about the weirdness aspect of this, could you talk a little bit about the prankster or the practical joker that was Milton?
Sure. He was. What just happened? Well, first of all, it lightens the mood, right? It lightens the mood. Intensity is intense, right? And most, again, in our culture, the only times that intensity tends to happen, right, is in really carefully defined context, right? Passionate romance is one, very inappropriate for a therapy session, right? Violent conflict is another, even more inappropriate for a therapy session, right? Maybe intensive pressure workflow could be a third. Okay, that's actually quite appropriate for a therapeutic session, right? There's not many places in which we get to be intense in our culture, right? Which is actually a shame because we lose a lot of the human spirit, right? Think back to the days where life was a little riskier, right? We needed intensity just to survive at times. And that intensity, in my experience, or at least my opinion, although I think experience is probably a better Freudian slip here, or was that an Ericksonian slip? Oh, who knows? Opens up to potential, because you're basically saying the way I normally operate isn't enough. Give me more unconscious, right? So what's the role of the trickster in this? Well, there's a number of things. Number one, typically it's fun, right? And what did we talk about yesterday in terms of fun and joy as opposed to stress and fear? What happens to the brain between those two states? Do you remember? Fear and stress tends to shut down cognitive functioning, right? Joy and fun tend to, well, not just open up the mind, but specifically it creates the context for the insight circuits in the brain to be able to fire off, which means people can make radical transformation, radical leaps of insight, right? Have you ever had an idea so good, you just got excited, you just couldn't help but want to do it? Yes? Now, what happens on those times that when you have an insight like that, but just can't get started straight away, you have to maybe wait a week or worse, a month. What happens to that idea after a month? It's dead, isn't it? There's no life behind it, and you try and do it, and it just sucks. It just doesn't have a thing. But if you could do it straight in the moment whilst inspiration is still fresh, what happens? Magic, right? So part of the trickster spirit is the idea that you embed change in the context of fun and joy, because that's an easier way to change, right? I personally am not a fan, and people can criticize me for this, and I'm sure some will, and I'm okay with that, right? I'm not a fan of the type of therapy that says, so, I won't actually look at anyone because this is really a little insulting. So, tell me, little wallflower, what's wrong with you? Oh, you poor dear. Oh, that's terrible. What does this do to someone? It victimizes them, right? It's a horrible thing. I really don't like it. I think it's an awful thing to sue someone, because it's basically telling them, you're a victim, you're broken, you have no resources, right? All in subcommunication, right? But now you take someone who's gone through some trauma and you go, you know what, that sucks. There's nothing to say. It's awful. How do you cope? That's a totally different subcommunication, isn't it? Right? One victimizes, one uplifts to the status of a hero. How do you do that? Right? You're implying a very different mindset. So part of the trickster is the idea that you're embedding change within the concept of fun. And who doesn't like to have fun? Right? Unless, of course, you have a fundamentalist ideology. And I always thought it's crazy that fundamentalist has the word fun in it, right? It's a lot like saying, don't make negations, right? It's just the same, self-negating statement. I'll come to you guys in a second, if I may, right? That's half of the equation. The other half of the trickster is, though, is an agreement reversal set. The idea is the conscious mind is all stuck on this idea. Life's got to be like this, right? And of course, the life they're looking for is outside of whatever this is, right? So they're stuck here, and then what they need to be is out of here. right? Now, if you tell them, step out of here, they'll go, screw you, I want to have it in here, right? That's the conscious mind's problem. Remember, if we loosely equate the conscious mind to left brain style thinking, right, it's exclusionary, right? Once an ideology sets in, it's going to exclude any information that doesn't support that state of mind. Does that make sense, guys? Really useful, by the way, for empowering realities. A little bit of self-delusion goes a long, long way to changing the world, a la Steve Jobs, right? But when it starts to be a problem, when a person's stuck and needs to find the results outside of that stuckness, now it's a problem. Does that make sense? So how do you get them out of that? Well, you basically have to trick them out of their reality. It's a benign trick, right? It's a trick that basically not like there's two ways of looking at tricks. You can trick someone to say, "Ha ha, fooled you," right? "Ha ha, fooled you" in the sense of, "Look how I've diminished you," right? "I am better than you." It's essentially what a malign prank would be about, right? There's another kind of prank though that says, "Ha ha, fooled you. Look how awesome you are." Do you see the difference? Now, does anyone here object to being fooled into understanding that you are so much more than you thought you were? Right? That's the trickster energy to it, right?